Welcome to the Billionaire's Choice. Before we begin today's story, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Every story here is a journey of love, destiny, and life-changing choices. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And now, let's begin. Sometimes the biggest changes in our lives begin with a single wrong turn. The rain had been falling over Manhattan since dawn, turning the city into a blur of silver reflections and glowing headlights. People hurried along the sidewalks beneath umbrellas, coffee cups in hand, eyes fixed on the next meeting, the next deadline, the next place they needed to be. Adeline Harper was no different. She tightened her grip on a large white bouquet wrapped in ivory paper and hurried across Lexington Avenue, her sneakers splashing through shallow puddles. A loose strand of blonde hair stuck to her cheek as she glanced down at the delivery slip for what felt like the 10th time in the last 5 minutes. Executive Office 42. Whitmore Tower. Urgent delivery. She sighed and pushed through the revolving doors of one of the tallest buildings in Midtown. The lobby alone looked larger than her family's flower shop. Polished marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers overhead. Men and women in tailored suits moved with purpose, speaking into wireless headsets and carrying leather portfolios that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Adeline instinctively straightened her jacket. She always felt out of place in buildings like this. Her life smelled like fresh roses, damp soil, and long hours behind a delivery van. This world smelled like expensive cologne and billion-dollar decisions. The bouquet felt heavier in her hands as she approached the reception desk. "Delivery for Executive Office 42, she said with a polite smile. The receptionist barely looked up. 42nd floor. Adeline nodded and headed toward the elevators. Her phone buzzed. It was her mother. She hesitated before answering. "Mom, sweetheart, don't forget the supplier called again." Adeline closed her eyes briefly. "I know. We can't keep delaying payment. I know." There was a pause. "Your father would have figured something out." The words landed softly but heavily. Adeline swallowed. "I'll figure something out too." She ended the call as the elevator doors opened. The familiar ache settled in her chest. Harper Flowers had survived 30 years. Her father had built it from nothing. Since his passing 2 years earlier, she had spent every waking hour trying to keep it alive. Some days it felt like trying to hold back the ocean with her bare hands. The elevator stopped. She stepped out quickly, distracted by thoughts of overdue invoices and shrinking bank accounts. What she didn't notice was the floor number glowing above the doors. 42, not 40. A simple mistake. The kind that happens every day. The kind that changes everything. Following the hallway signs, she found a large conference room with frosted glass walls. Through the glass, she could see people seated around a massive table. At the far end sat a man in a charcoal suit. Broad shoulders, dark hair, calm posture. Every person in the room seemed focused on him. Adeline checked the delivery slip again. Executive Office 42. Close enough, she thought. Maybe they were all sharing the same executive suite. She pushed open the door. Instantly, every conversation stopped. A dozen heads turned toward her. The silence hit like a wave. Adeline froze. She lifted the bouquet slightly. "Flower delivery?" No one answered. The man at the end of the table slowly looked up from a document in front of him. His gray eyes met hers. Sharp. Intelligent. Impossible to ignore. Declan Whitmore. Though Adeline had no idea who he was. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she glanced down at the card attached to the bouquet. "I think this is for Executive Office 42, she said nervously. "That's what this room is, right?" A few executives exchanged confused looks. One woman appeared ready to object. But before she could speak, Declan extended a hand. "Bring it here." Adeline crossed the room, painfully aware of every eye following her. She placed the bouquet in front of him and offered an apologetic smile. "Sorry if I interrupted something important." Declan's gaze dropped to the handwritten card, tucked between the white roses. The moment he read the message, something changed. His expression didn't disappear, but it shifted. Subtly, deeply, as though a door somewhere inside him had quietly opened. The room remained silent. Declan read the words again. For the man who forgot how to be happy. Then he looked up at Adeline. Not at the bouquet. Not at the delivery receipt. At her. "Who wrote this card?" he asked. Adeline blinked. "I don't know. I just deliver the flowers." Declan held her gaze for another second. Then he turned toward the executives surrounding the table. "Meeting adjourned." Confusion spread across several faces. One executive glanced at the clock. "Sir, we still need to discuss the acquisition later." His voice remained calm, but final. "Everyone out." Chairs scraped against the floor. Papers were gathered. One by one, the executives filed from the room, many casting curious glances toward the flower delivery girl standing awkwardly beside the conference table. Within moments, the enormous room was empty except for two people: Adeline Harper and the billionaire she had accidentally interrupted. Outside, the rain continued falling over Manhattan. Inside, neither of them realized that a delivery meant for the wrong office had just arrived at exactly the right destination. Adeline stood frozen beside the conference table, unsure whether she should leave or apologize again. The silence felt almost unreal now that the room had emptied. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind Declan Whitmore, Manhattan stretched beneath a curtain of rain and gray clouds. He looked down at the card one more time before carefully sliding it back between the white roses. "You really do not know who sent this?" he asked. Adeline shook her head. "No, sir. The order came through our shop this morning. I just picked it up and delivered it." "And the handwriting?" His eyes lifted to hers again. "Not yours." She hesitated. "The message is not mine." Then she smiled awkwardly. "But the card is." One eyebrow rose slightly. "What does that mean?" Adeline pointed toward the bouquet. "We add handwritten cards for customers who do not include one. Most flower shops print generic messages. My father believed flowers should mean something. So whenever a customer forgets, we write one ourselves." For the first time, something resembling curiosity appeared in Declan's expression. "Your father started the business?" 30 years ago." Her smile softened. "Harper Flowers." The words carried both pride and sadness. "He passed away 2 years ago." Declan glanced back at the bouquet. "And the message?" "I did not write that exact sentence. Whoever ordered the flowers requested it." She laughed nervously. "Honestly, I was wondering about it myself." A faint silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just unexpected. Adeline shifted her weight. "If that is all, I should probably get going. I still have 3 deliveries before lunch." "Wait." The word came so quickly it surprised both of them. Declan leaned back slightly in his chair. "Sit down." Adeline blinked. "What?" "Just for a minute." He gestured toward an empty chair. "I have a question." Everything about the situation felt strange. She had accidentally interrupted a meeting. She had somehow ended up alone with the man who apparently owned half the building. Yet something in his voice was calm enough to make her sit. "What kind of flowers are these?" he asked. She looked at the bouquet. "White roses. White lisianthus. A little stock flower. And what do they mean?" Her expression brightened instantly. It always did when someone asked about flowers. White roses usually symbolize new beginnings. Lisianthus represents appreciation and gratitude. She touched one of the blooms gently. "My father used to say flowers are conversations people have when they cannot find the right words." For a moment, Declan said nothing. Then he looked away toward the rain outside. "Interesting." Adeline noticed something then. Not in his face. In the office itself. Despite its elegance, the room felt empty. No family photos. No personal decorations. No signs of hobbies or memories. Just sleek furniture, awards, and city views. The office belonged to a man who spent his life building things, not living in them. Her phone suddenly buzzed again. She glanced down. Another delivery notification. Reality rushed back. "I really have to go." This time Declan nodded. "Of course." She stood and adjusted her jacket. "Well, thank you for not being angry." "About what?" "Interrupting a meeting that looked very important." The corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. "It was not the most important thing that happened today." Adeline laughed softly. "That sounds dramatic." "Maybe it is." She headed toward the door before pausing. "For what it is worth, whoever sent those flowers probably wanted you to smile." Declan glanced at the bouquet again. "And why would they think I forgot how?" Adeline considered the question for a second. "Because sometimes people who carry the most responsibility forget they are allowed to be happy too." The answer slipped out naturally, the same way she spoke to customers in the flower shop every day. Then she immediately regretted it. "Sorry, that probably sounded weird." "No," Declan said quietly. It did not. Adeline offered one final smile and left the room. A minute later, the elevator doors closed around her, carrying her back toward the busy streets below. She never saw Declan remain seated long after she was gone. She never saw him pick up the card again. And she certainly never saw him turn it over and notice the small handwritten signature hidden in the corner. Harper Flowers. Because the moment his eyes settled on those words, an idea began forming in his mind. An idea that would bring him straight to the little flower shop much sooner than either of them could imagine. The next morning arrived with clear skies and crisp spring air drifting through Manhattan. Adeline unlocked the front door of Harper Flowers at exactly 7 o'clock, balancing a tray of coffee cups while nudging the door open with her shoulder. The familiar scent of roses, eucalyptus, and fresh soil greeted her immediately. It was the one place in the world that still felt like home. She switched on the lights and glanced around the small shop. Wooden shelves lined the walls. Buckets of colorful flowers filled every corner. Above the register hung an old photograph of her father smiling beside the shop's very first flower display. "Good morning, Dad," she whispered automatically. It was a habit she never outgrew. Her mother was already arranging tulips near the front window. "You are early," her mother said. "Could not sleep." Adeline laughed softly. "I kept thinking about yesterday. The delivery? The strange billionaire office." Her mother smiled knowingly. "Maybe it will become a good story someday." Adeline doubted it. Men like Declan Whitmore belonged in magazines and financial news reports. People like her delivered flowers and worried about utility bills. Their worlds had crossed for a few minutes and would probably never meet again. By mid-morning, the shop settled into its usual rhythm. Orders were packed. Customers came and went. Delivery vans arrived. Nothing unusual happened until shortly after 11 o'clock. The bell above the door chimed. Adeline looked up while trimming flower stems behind the counter. Then she froze. Standing inside the doorway was Declan Whitmore. He was dressed casually compared to the day before, wearing a navy jacket and white shirt, but somehow he still looked completely out of place inside the tiny flower shop. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Adeline blinked. "You are real." A surprised smile touched his face. "I hope so." She immediately felt embarrassed. "Sorry, I just did not expect to see you here. Most people do not." He glanced around the shop, taking in every detail. The hand-painted signs, the old wooden counters, the family photographs, the warmth. It felt nothing like the glass towers he spent his days inside. "This is Harper Flowers?" he asked. "The famous empire?" Adeline laughed. "Empire might be generous." Her mother stepped forward from the back room. "Can I help you?" Declan extended his hand politely. Declan Whitmore. Her mother's eyes widened slightly. Even she recognized the name. "Oh, I would like to place an order." Adeline exchanged a confused look with her mother. "What kind of order?" Declan turned toward her. 50 bouquets. She nearly dropped the scissors in her hand. 50. For one of our hotels. 50 bouquets, she repeated again. "That is correct. Today, if possible." Adeline stared at him. Certain she had misunderstood. 50 bouquets was more business than some entire weeks. Her mother sat down slowly on a nearby chair. "Are you serious?" Declan nodded. "Very." Within an hour, the entire shop transformed into controlled chaos. Flowers covered every work table. Ribbon rolls scattered across counters. Employees rushed between coolers and workstations. Through it all, Declan remained nearby, occasionally answering calls, but mostly watching. At one point, Adeline looked up to find him studying a small handwritten card she had tucked into one of the arrangements. "What does this flower mean?" he asked. "Peony." She smiled. "Good fortune, compassion, happy relationships. You know all of them?" "My father made me memorize meanings when I was 12. Declan looked at the card again. Most people would never notice something like this. Maybe not. She carefully tied a ribbon around the bouquet. But the people who need it usually do. Something thoughtful crossed his face. The same expression he had worn when reading the mysterious message inside the white roses. Hours later, as workers loaded the final bouquets into a delivery van, Declan approached the counter. "Thank you." Adeline smiled. "You are welcome." He pulled a business card from his pocket and placed it on the counter between them. "I think this is only the beginning." Before she could ask what that meant, he walked toward the door. The bell chimed once more as he disappeared into the sunlight outside. Adeline looked down at the card. Beneath his name was a handwritten note. "I need another 100 bouquets next week." She stared at the number, then at the door he had just exited through. For the first time in months, hope felt a little less fragile. Over the next few weeks, the first hotel order exceeded every expectation. Guests complimented the floral displays. One hotel manager even sent a personal email praising the arrangements for creating a warmer atmosphere throughout the property. Encouraged by the response, Whitmore Hotels requested a second trial project at another location. That project proved equally successful. Soon, several managers were asking for Harper flowers by name. What began as a simple flower order was quietly turning into something much bigger. Over the next 3 weeks, Harper Flowers became busier than it had been in years. Every few days another order arrives from Whitmore Ventures. 50 bouquets became 100. 100 became 200. The cooler that had once looked half empty was now packed with roses, hydrangeas, peonies, and lilies waiting to be arranged. For the first time in a long time, overdue bills were being paid on time. The supplier stopped calling with worried reminders. Even Adeline's mother seemed lighter, smiling more often as she worked near the front window. Yet the biggest surprise was not the business itself. It was how often Declan Whitmore kept appearing. Sometimes he stopped by the shop for 10 minutes. Sometimes he stayed nearly an hour. Officially, he was checking on floral orders. Unofficially, Adeline suspected he simply enjoyed being there. One Thursday afternoon, she was standing on a ladder adjusting a display of climbing ivy when the familiar bell above the door chimed. Without looking down, she smiled. The peonies arrived this morning. Silence followed. Then Declan's voice came from below. That obvious? Adeline glanced down and laughed. You always show up on delivery days. Maybe I like flowers. You hated flowers 3 weeks ago. Perhaps my opinion evolved. She climbed down carefully and found him studying a framed photograph hanging beside the register. It showed her father standing outside the shop decades earlier. The paint on the sign looked fresh. His smile looked impossibly proud. Declan stared at the picture longer than usual. He looks like a good man. He was. Adeline folded her arms. He believed flowers mattered. Most people would call that a simple business. Not him. Her expression softened. He thought flowers appeared during the most important moments of people's lives. Weddings, graduations, new babies, reconciliations. He used to say that every bouquet tells a story. Declan remained quiet. And what story does this place tell? Adeline looked around the shop. The wooden shelves. The old photographs. The buckets filled with color. That. Some things are worth saving. Something flickered across his face. It disappeared so quickly she almost missed it. Before she could ask what he was thinking, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and sighed. Unfortunately, reality is calling. The billion-dollar reality? Something like that. As he answered the call and stepped outside, Adeline watched through the front window. The change was immediate. The relaxed man standing inside the flower shop vanished. In his place stood a CEO giving rapid instructions, discussing acquisitions, deadlines, and investor meetings. It was like watching two completely different people occupy the same body. The next week brought an even bigger surprise. Early Monday morning, Adeline received an invitation to visit Whitmore Tower. Not for a delivery, for a meeting. She spent the entire subway ride wondering whether something had gone wrong. By the time she reached the skyscraper, her stomach felt tight with nerves. A young assistant escorted her upstairs. This time she arrived on the correct floor. Declan was waiting near a wall of windows overlooking the city. You found the right office, he said. Adeline groaned. You are never going to let that go, are you? Absolutely not. He handed her a folder. Open it. Inside were architectural renderings, hotel photographs, and event schedules. Adeline frowned. What is this? A proposal. For flowers. For much more than flowers. He moved beside her and pointed toward the documents. Whitmore Hotels is renovating several properties next year. I want Harper Flowers to become our lead floral design partner. Her eyes widened as she turned the pages. There were hotels in New York, Chicago, Boston, Miami, and Seattle. The proposal focused on floral concepts, seasonal displays, event designs, and brand identity rather than day-to-day flower operations. You want Harper Flowers involved in all of this? I do. Declan, this is enormous. I know. She stared at him, convinced he had lost his mind. We are a neighborhood flower shop. Not for much longer. The confidence in his voice startled her. But what unsettled her even more was realizing that for the first time in years, she wanted to believe him. The proposal changed everything. Over the following 2 weeks, Adeline found herself spending more time inside Whitmore Tower than she ever imagined possible. Meetings replaced deliveries. Design presentations replaced quick drop-offs. She worked alongside architects, hotel managers, and event coordinators who all seemed surprised that the woman discussing floral strategy had once been delivering bouquets out of a small van. Yet every time doubt crept in, Declan seemed to appear at exactly the right moment. One evening, after a long planning session for a new hotel opening, most of the employees had already gone home. The city outside glowed beneath thousands of lights, stretching endlessly beyond the glass walls of the executive floor. Adeline gathered her notes and slipped them into a folder. "I should go," she said. "My mother will start thinking I moved into this building." Declan looked up from his laptop. "There are worse places to live." That sounds exactly like something a billionaire would say. A rare smile appeared. "Fair point." She started toward the elevator, then noticed he was not moving. The entire floor had become unusually quiet. "Are you staying?" she asked. "For a while. It is almost 9 o'clock. "I know." Something about his tone made her pause. For weeks, she had watched him move through meetings with complete confidence. Investors listened when he spoke. Executives adjusted plans based on his decisions. Yet standing alone in the silence of the office, he suddenly looked tired. Not physically, emotionally, like someone carrying a weight no one else could see. "When was the last time you went home before sunset?" she asked. He leaned back slightly. "I honestly do not remember. That is not healthy. According to my doctors, neither is coffee. And yet you drink enough for an entire city." "Also true." Adeline laughed softly before noticing something sitting near the corner of his desk. A single framed photograph. It was the first personal item she had ever seen in his office. She pointed toward it. "Who is she?" The humor vanished from his expression. Immediately, Adeline regretted asking. "Sorry, you do not have to answer." For several seconds, he simply stared at the photograph. Then he stood and walked toward the window overlooking Manhattan. Her name was Claire. His voice remained calm, but quieter than usual. "We were engaged." Adeline froze. "I did not know. Most people do not." The city lights reflected across the glass as he continued speaking. 5 years ago, we were planning a wedding. She loved flowers." A faint laugh escaped him. "Actually, she loved everything I claimed was impractical." Adeline listened carefully. "What happened?" Another silence followed. "She became seriously ill." He lowered his eyes briefly. "We thought there would be more time." The words were simple. The pain behind them was not. Suddenly many things began making sense. The empty office. The endless workdays. The loneliness she had sensed from the beginning. "I am sorry," she said quietly. Declan nodded once. "Afterward, I stopped celebrating things." His gaze drifted toward the city again. Birthdays. Holidays. Anniversaries. Flowers. He gave a small shake of his head. Especially flowers. Adeline thought about the white bouquet she had delivered weeks earlier. The one that somehow started all of this. "Because they reminded you of her?" "Because they reminded me of what I lost." Neither spoke for a moment. The air felt heavier now, filled with truths rarely shared. Finally, Adeline walked closer and looked out at the skyline beside him. "My father used to say flowers are proof that beautiful things can return after difficult seasons." Declan glanced toward her. "That sounds like something he would believe." He did. She smiled gently. "And honestly, I think he would have liked you." That surprised a laugh out of him. A real one. Not the polite version she usually heard. Just a brief moment of genuine amusement. When it faded, something softer remained behind. "You know," he said quietly, "you are the first person who has made this office feel less empty in a very long time." Adeline felt her heartbeat stumble unexpectedly. Outside, the lights of Manhattan continued shining across the night, but neither of them seemed eager to leave. For the first time since they met, the distance between their worlds felt a little smaller. 3 days later, an elegant black envelope arrived at Harper Flowers. Adeline almost threw it away, assuming it was another corporate advertisement. Only when she noticed the Whitmore Ventures seal did she pause. Inside was an invitation printed on thick, cream-colored paper. "Whitmore Foundation Annual Gala. Saturday, 7 o'clock. Formal attire requested." At the bottom, a handwritten note appeared in familiar handwriting. "I would like you there. Declan." For several minutes, she simply stared at the card. By Saturday evening, She was standing beneath the glittering chandeliers of the Grand Regency Ballroom, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. Crystal lights reflected across polished marble floors. A string quartet played softly near a sweeping staircase. Men in tailored tuxedos and women in elegant gowns filled the enormous room. Adeline adjusted the sleeve of the navy dress her mother had insisted she buy. It was the nicest thing she owned, yet she still felt like an outsider. The floral displays surrounding the ballroom had been designed by Harper Flowers. White roses, soft peonies, cascading greenery. Seeing her work transform the room gave her a small boost of confidence. Then she spotted Declan across the ballroom. For a moment, everything else faded. He stood surrounded by investors, executives, and public officials, effortlessly commanding attention without appearing to seek it. When he noticed her, his expression softened immediately. He crossed the room toward her. "You came. You sounded difficult to refuse." "Good answer." His eyes moved briefly over her dress before returning respectfully to her face. "You look beautiful tonight, Adeline." Warmth rushed into her cheeks. "Thank you." For the next hour, he remained close. He introduced her to hotel executives, charity board members, and community leaders. Yet something felt strange. Every person seemed to know exactly who Declan was. They spoke to him with a level of respect that went far beyond ordinary business success. Adeline knew he was wealthy. She knew he owned hotels and companies. But she had never paid much attention to financial news. She never truly understood the scale of his world. Eventually, an announcement echoed through the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please take your seats." The crowd began moving toward the stage. Adeline settled at a table near the front while Declan excused himself. "I will be right back." She watched him disappear behind a curtain near the stage. Moments later, the chairman of the foundation stepped to the podium. "Tonight we celebrate leadership, philanthropy, and community impact." Applause followed. Adeline listened politely until the speaker continued. None of this would be possible without the vision of the man who built one of the most influential business groups in America. Her attention sharpened. A giant screen illuminated behind the stage. Images appeared. Luxury hotels, technology campuses, international conferences, magazine covers, financial headlines. Then a familiar face filled the screen. Declan Whitmore. Adeline's breath caught. Founder and Chief Executive Officer of Whitmore Global Holdings. Named among the most influential business leaders in the country. Creator of the Whitmore Foundation. Please welcome our guest of honor, Declan Whitmore. The ballroom erupted into applause. Hundreds of people rose to their feet. Adeline remained frozen in her chair. Guest of honor. One of the most influential business leaders in the country. Whitmore Global Holdings. Suddenly, dozens of conversations replayed inside her mind. The private jets she had ignored. The executives who treated him like royalty. The constant media attention she never questioned. She had thought he was successful. She had not realized he was famous. Declan stepped onto the stage as cameras flashed. Calm, confident, powerful. The room seemed to revolve around him. Yet as he approached the podium, his eyes searched the audience until they found hers. For a second, neither looked away. Then a painful realization settled inside her chest. How much of his world had he never told her? How many things had she never asked? As the audience applauded again, Adeline suddenly felt farther from him than she had the day she accidentally walked into the wrong office. The applause seemed to continue forever. Adeline heard it. She saw it. Yet somehow it felt distant, like she was standing underwater while the rest of the ballroom existed somewhere above the surface. On stage, Declan spoke about charitable initiatives, community programs, and future projects. The audience listened to every word. Reporters took notes. Cameras followed his movements. He belonged here, completely. And for the first time since meeting him, Adeline wondered if she ever had. By the end of the speech, she no longer felt comfortable sitting at the front table. The room suddenly seemed too bright, too crowded, too aware of differences she had spent weeks ignoring. She slipped quietly from her seat and stepped into a marble hallway outside the ballroom. The silence felt like relief. A few minutes later, she heard familiar footsteps behind her. There you are. Declan's voice was gentle. Adeline turned slowly. I was wondering how long it would take you to find me. His expression tightened. You are upset. Should I not be? Adeline, one of the most influential business leaders in America? Her laugh carried no humor. That would have been useful information. I never lied to you. You never told me either. The words landed harder than she intended. Declan ran a hand through his hair. Because it never seemed important. Not important. She stared at him. Declan, your world is on magazine covers. That is exactly why I did not want it to matter. Easy for you to say. The hallway fell silent. For weeks, she had grown comfortable around the man who visited her flower shop, who listened to stories about her father, who laughed at her jokes, and stayed late helping review floral designs. Suddenly, she was being forced to reconcile that man with the billionaire standing in front of her. Do you know what the worst part is? She asked quietly. I never questioned any of it. Because you trusted me. Exactly. Something painful flickered across his face. And you still can. Before she could answer, another voice interrupted. Declan. A tall woman approached from the ballroom. Elegant, polished, confident. She wore an expensive black gown, and the expression of someone accustomed to being important. The board is looking for you. Her gaze shifted toward Adeline. A brief smile appeared. It never reached her eyes. You must be the florist. Adeline nodded politely. Adeline Harper. Vanessa Cole. The woman extended her hand. Senior Vice President. The conversation that followed lasted less than a minute, yet something about it left Adeline uncomfortable. Vanessa's smile seemed practiced. Her compliments sounded rehearsed. Most of all, the way she looked at Adeline felt less like curiosity and more like evaluation. After Vanessa disappeared back into the ballroom, Declan apologized and returned to the event. Adeline left shortly afterward. The next morning, things became worse. An online business column published photographs from the gala. One image showed Declan speaking with Adeline beside the floral displays. Another showed them laughing together during the reception. The article itself was harmless. The comments beneath it were not. Some suggested she was using him. Others assumed she was seeking attention. By afternoon, social media accounts had begun speculating about her background. The following day, a gossip site published a headline questioning why a billionaire executive seemed unusually interested in a neighborhood florist. Adeline tried ignoring it. She failed. Then came the phone call. One of Whitmore Ventures' managers informed her that several executives were concerned about public perception. Officially, no contracts were changing. Unofficially, the message was clear. She had become a topic of discussion. That evening, Adeline sat alone inside Harper Flowers long after closing. The shop was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigeration units. On the counter sat Declan's business card. Beside it rested the handwritten note from the first large order he had placed. She stared at both for a long time. Finally, she stood. The next morning, she arrived at Whitmore Tower carrying a small envelope. Inside was her access badge, project documents, and office key. When Declan appeared outside the conference room, surprise filled his face. What is this? She handed him the envelope. I think it is better if I step back. Because of some gossip articles? Because your world is starting to notice mine. I do not care about that. Maybe you do not. Her voice softened. But other people clearly do. Declan looked at the envelope without taking it. Adeline, do not do this. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded card. The same handwritten message that had arrived with the white roses weeks earlier. For the man who forgot how to be happy. I am keeping this, she said quietly. Why? His voice sounded almost fragile. Adeline forced a small smile. Because it reminds me that some mistakes are beautiful. Then she turned and walked away before she could change her mind, leaving Declan standing alone in the hallway as the distance between them became greater than either of them had imagined possible. The weeks that followed felt strangely quiet. The restoration project had quietly been in development for months. Declan had started planning it long before Adeline left, keeping the entire effort private. Harper Flowers remained busy, but something important was missing. Adeline noticed it every morning when she unlocked the shop. Every afternoon when the bell above the door chimed and it was not him. Every evening when she glanced at her phone and found no messages waiting. She told herself it was for the best. The gossip had faded. The attention had moved elsewhere. Life was returning to normal. Yet normal suddenly felt disappointing. Across the city, Declan threw himself into work with the same intensity he once used to avoid loneliness. Meetings filled every hour. New projects appeared on his calendar. Investors praised his focus. None of it helped. The flower card remained inside the top drawer of his desk. Some nights, he found himself reading the message over and over again. For the man who forgot how to be happy. One Thursday morning, an internal report landed on his desk. At first, he barely paid attention. Then a detail caught his eye. Several anonymous communications regarding Adeline had originated from inside Whitmore Ventures. Further investigation revealed a pattern. The same executive appeared repeatedly. Vanessa Cole. His expression hardened. Within days, the truth became clear. Vanessa had quietly encouraged rumors, fed information to gossip blogs, and amplified speculation about Adeline. Not because she cared about public perception, because she resented the influence Adeline had gained. The discovery left Declan staring out his office window for a long time. He had spent weeks allowing Adeline to believe the distance between them was necessary. Meanwhile, someone else had helped create that distance. He immediately addressed the situation internally and removed Vanessa from any projects connected to Harper Flowers. Yet when it was finished, he realized something uncomfortable. Fixing the problem was not enough. He had still failed to fight for someone who mattered. Meanwhile, Adeline focused on rebuilding her future. The hotel contracts remained active, though handled through management teams instead of direct meetings. Business continued growing. One afternoon, while organizing invoices, she received an unexpected letter. There was no sender name, only an invitation. Grand opening celebration. Harper Botanical House. Saturday at noon. Curious, she turned the card over. Her breath caught. The address belonged to an old historic greenhouse property on the edge of Central Park. She had heard developers discussing it for years. No one ever seemed able to restore it. Her mother noticed her expression. What is it? Adeline handed over the invitation. I have no idea. Saturday arrived beneath bright blue skies. Crowds gathered outside the restored greenhouse. Elegant glass architecture sparkled in the sunlight. Gardens surrounded the property in every direction. Roses climbed trellises. Lavender lined stone walkways. White peonies swayed gently in the spring breeze. Adeline stepped through the entrance and immediately stopped. Her eyes widened. The central wall of the building displayed enormous silver lettering. Harper Botanical House, founded in honor of Benjamin Harper. Her father's name. For a moment she could not breathe. Visitors moved around her, admiring exhibits and floral installations. She barely noticed. Slowly she walked deeper inside. Every room reflected ideas. She remembered discussing with her father. Community gardening programs, floral education workshops, art exhibitions inspired by nature. Dreams he once talked about, but never had the resources to build. Then she entered the main gallery. At the center stood a display enclosed beneath glass. White roses, white lisianthus, stock flowers. The exact bouquet from that rainy day. Beside it hung a framed card. For the man who forgot how to be happy. Tears filled her eyes instantly. I was hoping you would come. She turned. Declan stood several feet away. His expression carried none of the confidence she usually associated with him. Only honesty. You built this. Adeline whispered. He nodded. Not for publicity. Not for business. His voice softened. For your father. For you. For everything you believed was worth saving. As she stared around the gallery, surrounded by living proof of a promise she never knew existed, she realized this was never about flowers. It was about being seen. And for the first time since she walked away from Whitmore Tower, hope returned stronger than ever. For several seconds, neither of them moved. The sounds of the greenhouse faded into the background as Adeline stared at the man standing before her. Months earlier, he had been a stranger in a conference room, then a customer, then a friend, then someone she could not stop thinking about. Now he stood in the middle of a dream built from memories she thought only her father remembered. Her eyes moved slowly across the gallery once more. Every detail carried meaning. Every flower arrangement reflected conversations she once had behind the counter of a struggling shop. Every pathway seemed designed by someone who had listened carefully to things she never expected anyone to remember. You did all this? She asked again. Declan nodded. Not alone. A lot of talented people helped. You know that is not what I mean. A small smile appeared. Then yes. Emotion tightened her throat. Why? He took a slow breath. Because walking away from you was the biggest mistake I have made in years. Adeline lowered her eyes. I was the one who left. Because I gave you a reason to. His voice remained calm. You trusted me, and I assumed trust would survive without honesty. It does not work that way. For a moment neither spoke. Then Declan reached into his jacket pocket and removed a folded piece of paper. Adeline immediately recognized it. The original delivery receipt from the rainy morning they met. He unfolded it carefully. The edges were worn from being handled too often. I kept this. Adeline laughed through tears. You kept a delivery receipt? I keep important things. She shook her head in disbelief. That is ridiculous. Probably. His expression softened. But that wrong delivery changed my life. The honesty in his voice left no room for doubt. Around them, visitors continued exploring the greenhouse, unaware of the conversation unfolding near the center gallery. Sunlight streamed through the glass ceiling overhead, filling the space with warmth. Declan glanced toward the recreated bouquet displayed beneath glass. The funny thing is that everyone thinks success comes from making the right decisions. He looked back at her. But the best thing that ever happened to me started because somebody stepped onto the wrong floor. Adeline smiled despite herself. I still cannot believe I walked into that meeting. I can. Why? Because if you had not, I would still be sitting alone in that office pretending work was enough. The words settled gently between them. For the first time since the gala, the distance that had grown between them seemed to disappear completely. Declan reached for her hand. Adeline, this place is not the surprise. She blinked. It is not. No, before she could ask another question, he guided her through a set of glass doors leading into a private garden behind the greenhouse. White roses lined the pathway. Soft spring sunlight illuminated a circular garden at the center. There, arranged exactly as it had been months earlier, stood the original bouquet. White roses. White lisianthus. Stock flowers. The beginning of everything. Adeline stopped walking. Her heart pounded. Declan turned toward her and lowered himself onto one knee. For a second she simply stared, unable to believe what she was seeing. Then he held out a small velvet box. You once told me flowers are conversations people have when they cannot find the right words. His voice was steady, but emotion filled every syllable. The problem is that I finally found the words. Tears slipped down Adeline's cheeks. Declan, he opened the box. Inside rested a simple, elegant ring. You walked into the wrong office. His eyes never left hers. But somehow you found the right man. The garden seemed to disappear around them. There was only the two of them standing inside a moment neither would ever forget. I do not want another season of my life without you in it. His smile was warm and hopeful. Will you marry me? Adeline laughed through her tears. The answer had lived in her heart long before the question arrived. Yes. The word came instantly. Yes, I will. Applause erupted around them. She turned in surprise to discover her mother standing near the garden entrance. Employees from Harper Flowers were there too. Several members of the greenhouse staff smiled from a respectful distance. Even some of the hotel managers she had worked with over the past months had gathered quietly to witness the moment. Declan slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to his feet. Adeline wrapped her arms around him as laughter and applause filled the garden. 1 year later, Harper Botanical House became one of the city's most beloved public spaces. Community programs flourished. Floral education workshops helped hundreds of aspiring designers. Harper Flowers expanded beyond anything Adeline once imagined possible. Yet her favorite part remained unchanged. Every time she visited the greenhouse, she passed the display containing the white bouquet and the handwritten card that started everything. For the man who forgot how to be happy. Beneath it, a second plaque had been added. Sometimes the wrong door leads exactly where your heart was meant to go. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share this video, and let us know where you are watching from, and subscribe to the Billionaire's Choice. Every week, we bring you heartwarming stories of love, destiny, and life-changing decisions. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new story.